Good morning, students. So today we start our next topic, that is components of an ecosystem in chapter 13, that is organisms and population. The students, you have learned from your previous classes and you have heard these components so many times. If I say that ecosystem is a life's self-sustaining unit, then it has two components, biotic components and abiotic components. As the name itself indicates, biotic components always constitute living organisms. And there are variety of interactions that takes place between these living organisms. In yesterday's lecture, I have taught you it may be predations, it may be parasitism, it may be competition or commensalism or symbiotic association. So biotic components, we mean always living organisms. Okay, student, the second thing is the abiotic components. So these abiotic components are actually the physical factors that are present in the habitat of an organism in which that organism is living from many years. So these physical factors, it may be temperature, water, light, or soil. They generally affect the life of that living organism in so many ways. And one thing that I want to tell you here is that all of you know that all living organisms, when share a particular habitat, when living in a particular habitat, then that living organism must have to make certain adjustments in their life so that they can easily survive in that habitat. So they have developed certain adaptive features, and these adaptive features, they generally develop in the living organism during the course of natural selection. As you are well aware of the theory of natural selection, you have heard this theory in class 10th, that nature gives an opportunity to the living organisms to make necessary adjustments so that they can easily survive in the prevailing conditions of the environments. So those living organisms which generally adjust themselves according to the prevailing environmental conditions, they survive, and those who do not make necessary adjustments, they generally get extinct. And this theory was given by the scientist Charles Darwin. It is also known as the theory of survival of the fittest, or you can say natural selection. So when a particular living organism is living in a place from many years, then these adaptive features, they get developed in that living organism, and this makes the living organisms capable to survive in that habitat. Whether the appropriate conditions are present in the habitat or whether some harsh conditions are present in the habitat, that organism cannot swipe out, but it increases its survival rate because of those adaptive features. And one term that here I want to discuss with you, that is a niche. What is niche? A niche is a small territory within a habitat. So every organism has a defined range of conditions, and that is it can tolerate diversity in the resources it utilizes and a distinct functional attitude or behavior in the ecological system. All of these things, they constitute the niche. So if I am giving the example of any wild animal such as lion or tiger, then that lion or tiger, it roams in the whole forest, but it spent most of its time in a cave or a den in which that lion generally sleeps. So that small territory within the habitat is actually known as the niche. The student, here one flow chart is visible on your screen, which here shows you the abiotic and the biotic factors. So biotic factors are always living organisms, and all living organisms which are sharing a particular habitat, they have variety of interactions among them. For example, in the predator type of interaction, one living organism acts as prey and the other acts as a predator. In commensalism, two living organisms, they stay together and one gets benefited. but the other is not bothering whether the other is benefited or not. And similarly, in case of parasitism, one is a parasite and another is a host. So parasite always causes harm to the host, but still this parasite associated with that host. Next one is a symbiotic association. So both the members, they are benefited from each other. So such type of interactions, they are generally found in the living organisms who are sharing the same habitat. And this habitat, the organism which is living in this habitat is not affected by the living interactions only, but it is also affected by the abiotic factors. So these abiotic factors are generally the physical factors. It may be a temperature, it may be water, sunlight, or the conditions that are present in a soil, or the characteristics of the soil. So here in today's lecture, we are going to study in detail about these major abiotic factors. So first of all, I am going to tell you more about temperature. As you know very well, the temperature is the most important ecologically relevant environmental factor. And if we are talking about the temperature on land, then the temperature on land is not constant, but it varies according to different seasons. As you know, the temperature is comparatively less in the winter season, but it is at extreme in the summer season. And similarly, if we go away from the equators, the temperature, it also goes on decreasing. That means at equator, the temperature is very high, whereas at the polar regions, the temperature is very less. And if we are talking about plains, then there is a moderate range of temperature that is generally found in the plains. But if you are climbing one mountain, then at the bottom of that mountain, we have the normal temperature. But when we start climbing that mountain and we reach the middle zone of the mountain, then there the temperature is comparatively less as compared to the bottom. And slight rainfall is also there. And when you reach the top of the mountain, you feel an extremely different kind of temperature. And that is the temperature is very cold there. And you feel cold situations there. So in this way, the variation is there among the temperature. So here I have written that it ranges from sub-zero levels in polar areas and high altitudes. But if we are talking about the tropical deserts in summer, then this temperature, it reaches the value 50, greater than 50 degrees Celsius. Similarly, in some unique type of habitats, such as thermal springs and deep sea thermal hydrothermal vents, here the average temperature, it exceeds 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, student, here I have shown you one graph in which you can easily see the variations in the temperature in different seasons. So in the winter season, there is a linear decrease in the value of the temperature, whereas in the summer season, the temperature is somewhat moderate. So you feel some cold as well as hot conditions too. And in the summer season, there is a rapid increase in the temperature. So the temperature is very high in some days. So in this way, there is a variation. It continuously occurs in the temperature due to different seasons. Yeah, student, according to this temperature, the types of enzymes which are present in the living organisms, and they are controlling so many metabolic reactions and physiological reactions in the body of the organism. The kinetics of these enzymes, they also get affected due to change in the temperature. So in this way, there are two types of organisms. One is a eurythermal organism, and second one is stenothermal organism. The eurythermal organisms are generally few organisms, and they have the ability that they can tolerate and thrive in a wide range of temperature. They have the ability to regulate their temperature according to the prevailing conditions of the environment. And what are stenothermal organisms? So majority of the organisms, they are restricted to a narrow range of temperature. And if the temperature exceeds beyond that range, then it is difficult for these organisms to survive. So such type of organisms, they are known as stenothermal organisms. So temperature tolerance of a species, it also depends upon the geographical habitat of that organisms. What kind of conditions are there in that geographical habitat or its location, that will decide the temperature over there. That means those areas which are located near to equator, they always receive high temperature. And those areas which are generally found in the polar regions, they always face cold conditions, extreme cold conditions. Yes, student, here I have shown you beautiful animals. One is the eurythermal type of animal, and another is the example of a stenothermal animal. So eurythermal animals are actually those animals which can tolerate a wide range of temperature. And stenothermal animals, for example, fishes here, are those animals which are adapted to a narrow range of temperature, and they can easily die if the temperature exceeds that narrow range. Yes, student, another type of abiotic factor here is the water. As you know very well, water is an important ecological factor that affects the life of an organism, and you know that life originated on earth first in water. So living organisms, they cannot survive without water. How much water is available, that will decide the distribution of the living organism in that habitat. As you see in the desert ecosystem, there are very less plant and animal species because of deficiency of water over there. But there are abundance of plants and animal species in the forest ecosystem, in the grassland ecosystem, because here the water deficient conditions are not there. Besides this, the productivity as well as the distribution of the plant, it is heavily dependent on water. Even organisms, those who are living in oceans, lakes, rivers, etc. You cannot say that these organisms, they are not facing the problems related with water. They also face the problems related with water, though they are living in water. Okay, students. For aquatic organisms, the quality of water is very important. That means quality of water, I mean the chemical composition of water. That is the amount of salt present in the water or other minerals present in the water. The pH of the water is also very important, whether it is an acidic, neutral, or a basic pH. So the salt concentration, as you know, it is concerned with the ocean water. But here the salt concentration, if we measure in parts per thousand, then it is less than 5 in inland water. That is the water which is fresh water in rivers, streams, springs, and 30 to 35 in the sea or the ocean water. And the salt concentration is greater than 100 in some hypersaline lagoons. So according to that, again, we have two types of organisms. These are euryhaline organism and stenohaline organisms. So euryhaline organisms are actually those organisms which are capable of showing tolerance to a wide range of salinities. And these organisms, they can easily face the conditions that is related with the salt concentration in the water. And stenohaline organisms are actually those organisms which may be freshwater or which may be marine organisms. These freshwater animals, they cannot live for long in seawater. And similarly, that happens for the marine animals also, because they are adapted according to the saline water conditions. So they cannot survive easily in fresh waters because they already face osmotic problems. So that's why the concentration of the salt, whatever is present in the water, it play a significant role in the life of the aquatic animals, that what kind of animals are adapted for what kind of conditions. Yes, student, here I have shown you one beautiful picture of some fishes, bucktail fishes. They are generally adapted for a wide range of saline water, so they are known as the euryhaline type of species. And the second two photographs are of those fishes which are living according to a narrow range of saline water, and they are known as the stenohaline animals. The third very important factor is light. As whenever we are talking about light, we are actually here explaining the role of light in the life of living organisms such as plants. As you know that plants are autotrophs and they have to prepare their food not for themselves but also for other organisms or heterotrophs which are dependent on them. So a unique process is occurring in plant, and that is known as photosynthesis. So the process of photosynthesis cannot happen in the absence of light. As you know, it is a light reaction. Also, you know that there are many species of plants. It may be herbs, it may be shrubs and tall trees in the forest ecosystem. So these tall trees, they also have broad canopies. And the herbs and the shrubs, they are overshadowed by the canopy of these tall trees. So they also have to do photosynthesis, but they do the task of photosynthesis at very low light intensity. Whereas the tall trees, they can easily handle the high light intensities and show an increase in the process of photosynthesis with high light intensities. Besides this, I want to tell you one more thing, that there are certain plants which are dependent on sunlight to meet their photoperiodic requirements. So when that particular light is available to them, these plants, they produce a flowering. So what is photoperiodism? It is the process of producing flowering. When a light of particular wavelength, it reaches that plant. Yes, student, here I want to tell you more about the light. So light is also important for animals too. There are certain animals that generally are diurnal. That means some of the animals, they are doing their general activities during daytime and some do their activities during night time. So these activities may be foraging, that is roaming in the forest to get some prey, and reproductive activities as well as migratory activities. So seasonal variations, they also occurs according to different light intensities. So beside this, the availability of light on land is closely linked with the temperature, since the sun is the source of light for both, source of energy for both. And if you are talking about oceans, then you know very well that deep in the oceans, greater than 500 meters high, the environment is actually dark. And the members in the sea are not aware of any siliceous source of energy like the sun. So generally the animals living in the deep zones of the oceans, they are blind as total darkness is there. And the spectral quality of the solar radiation, it is also important for life in certain cases. As the ultraviolet component of the spectrum, it is harmful to many organisms. While not all the color components of the visible spectrum are available for marine plants, which are living at different depths of the sea. For example, red algae, brown algae, and green algae, you have learned about them. They inhabit the different zones of the oceans and they absorb the light corresponding to characteristic colors, which are later corresponding to a characteristic wavelength. So in this way, the spectral components of the light, they are also playing a significant role in the growth and development of plant species. Yes, student, the last but not the least factor is the soil. So soil is again a very important ecological factor, and the nature and properties of soil in different places, it also varies. Soil, it is actually dependent on the climatic conditions of that area, the weathering process, and whether the soil is the transported soil or it is sedimentary, and how that soil development it actually occurs. That matters a lot. So various characters of soil we generally consider, such as a soil composition, then the grain size or the particle size of the soil particles and their aggregates, and percolation ability of the soil and how much water that particular soil hold. That will also decide what kind of crops we generally grow in that kind of soil. And pH, mineral composition, topography of the soil. It also determined to a large extent the vegetation that are growing generally in that area. So this also decide the type of the animal that can be supported by that soil type. So in the aquatic environment, the sediment characteristics of the soil often determine the type of the benthic animals that generally thrive there. Okay, student, beside these, as you know, these abiotic factors, they are generally affected the life of a living organisms. So here, we are going to study about the responses to abiotic factors by the living organisms. Here I want to tell you one thing, that the abiotic conditions in any habitat or an ecosystem, it cannot remain same for a long time. It generally may vary drastically. So the organism which is living in such habitat form so many years, they have the ability to cope or to manage with these stressful conditions. As I have already explained you, that whatever type of variable external conditions are there in the environment, that cannot bother the organism. Because during the course of millions of years of their existence, every species would now be able to adjust their constant internal environment and permits all kind of biochemical and physiological reactions to happen in their body with maximum efficiency. And in this way, every species is able to maintain the overall fitness of itself. So every organism have the ability to maintain a constant internal environment inside it, in which all the biochemical and physiological reactions can happen very easily. And this phenomena is known as homeostasis. The homeostasis of a species cannot affected whether there may be variable conditions present in the environment. The species always want to adjust their body according to the prevailing conditions and do not let the homeostasis to get disturbed. So here we will study in the upcoming lecture about the various types of processes that are generally shown by the organisms in order to make necessary adjustment towards these drastic changes of abiotic factors that happen in the habitat of an organism. So that's all in today's lecture, student. Have a nice day. Tomorrow we will study about the various type of processes which are quite helpful for a species to survive in their habitat. Thank you.